Hi, this is Mary Jane from Linus Publications. Yesterday, we looked at China and where their position is with the tariffs. Today, we're going to follow up, and yesterday it was using the risk yield and the Delta Core Transient charts. Today, we're going to follow up and look at their astrological chart and see what other type of information we can get from that. So, this is their astrological chart. And it's based on a birth date that's in 1949. Now, the time, we don't know if that's exactly correct. And what that will mean is that the outside ring, these numbers here, may not be absolutely correct. But it's not going to change what we're talking about here. Because what we're talking about is the angles between the planets. And they're not going to be changing much. So we're going to focus on that, and then we're going to identify what's happening. So first, I want to touch on something that already happened, and that was on March 13th. What happened? We had Pluto, which is a power of intense, of manipulation, power plays, making an angle to China's moon. The moon is an emotion. Sometimes it stands for people, motherhood. In this case, let's look at it as sort of the consensus of the Chinese people, their emotional thoughts on this. So when we had Pluto touching on, and the type of angle is a conjunction, which is intense. What we had Pluto touching on this, it means that this actually caused intense reactions in China, even though it wasn't evident. Now, to them, it makes their life unstable. It also changes their relationship going forward. So while the White House administration may think, oh, this is just a tariff, not a big deal, things will go back to normal, I don't think so. I think this is going to be remembered, and it's going to change the relationship going forward for quite a while. So it's not trivial. This can also bring up an upswelling of country pride, feeling that their country is being taken advantage of. So it's something to remember. Also, J.D. Vance, in some of his comments about China, was calling the people peasants. That's something that would have not have been received well. Chinese people, also the leadership, were very watchful of how Zelensky was treated when he went to the White House. That is not the way you treat a foreign dignitary, a foreign leader coming to the White House. China looks at actions. So you can say whatever you want. They look at how you have acted. Now, next year, and I'm touching on it just a little bit so you have some advance warning, we have Pluto also making an angle over to Uranus and Fate, which is Karma. Now, this type of angle is an inconjunct, which is a change and adjust. So this type of angle usually means that China doesn't see this coming. Now, it's intense, so an intense type of change is coming, and it's also associated that it can't be changed. It's fate. It's something that's predetermined to happen. Now, this type of angle, usually China's not going to know what's happening. But it could also be from something like being some type of action of another country, spurring an action from China. Or it could also be a natural disaster. So we could have something like an earthquake or maybe floods that causes significant damage. Now, could also be a dam that breaks. So it's not to say that China didn't have a play in this and they didn't realize what could happen, But when it happens, it's not like they could have done anything about it. Now let's take a look at another piece, and that is Jupiter here, making a connection to Jupiter. Now, Jupiter, in this type of angle, which you get as an inconjunct, it means they don't know what's going to happen. It just happens. And this is going to happen around the 7th of May. What this indicates is difficulties. And a lot of times those difficulties can be associated with foreigners. So again, this may be something associated with the United States, and specifically with trade. Now, lastly, I want to touch on Saturn making a conjunction to what's called a black moon. Black moon is a point, and it is a point that is typically associated with a path, changing a path or the path you're on. In this case, Saturn is associated with restrictions. This is happening around the end of May, May 24th, happens again in September, and then again in February. What this means is that at that point, for some reason, and we'll know the reasons when the time comes, China is going to be on a path that they cannot move from, or a path that they were forced into. The important thing to note here is they can't change it. So something that happens could have to do with trade, could have to do with something else, means that China may be back with their back against the wall, and they're going down a path and we can't change it, or they can't change it. So it's something to remember. As I noted in the risk yield and the Delta Core transit, they had an incident that's likely occurring around the beginning of June. So this could have to do with that, where something happens and they're literally just, they're funneled into just having one action going forward. I hope you enjoyed this and have a great rest of Saturday. Bye now.